is Sarah and I'm a weaver and knitter and otherwise fiber dabbler. Normally you can find me, if you're a Swedish speaker, on Hantverkshärvan. I'll put a link, where me and my friend Hannah has a weaving and knitting vlog. But I wanted to create this space for some more weaving content and also for my non-Swedish speaker friends, and maybe to build a little bit more community. I'm really missing some weaving friends. That's why I created Hantverkshärvan with Hannah. I'm trying to kind of lure my knitting friends into weaving, and it's starting to actually work. So I want to create this space for a little bit more of weaving content. But today I'm just gonna vlog a little bit what I'm doing. Today is a dedicated weaving day for me, which is great. Looking forward to that. I have a couple of different things I want to do. First of all, on my list of to-dos is to calculate the warp and like calculate the project for a men's scarf. I want to weave like a really, you know, manly, classy scarf for my dad. Like, he's not a guy who would wear anything flamboyant or like even a little bit out there, so I need to keep it really like classy. So I'm gonna do that hopefully, because I'm having some issue actually finding my yarn. It's gone. I have some beautiful alpaca yarn, like local Swedish alpaca yarn. I got it in a craft exchange. It's so pretty and has such a like luster to it, and I wanted to use that. It's chocolate brown and beige, and I've already also like did some complimentary shopping for this project because I didn't quite have enough. So I bought this mini alpaca from Sandnes Garn to go with it, to kind of have some more yarn for the warp. But now I can't find the original yarn, so going to look for that. It has to be somewhere, right? But hopefully I'll find that and make those calculations. Second on my list is that on the loom right now I have just a little bit leftover warp from just cutting off my most recent project, which was a monk's belt trial that I did. So I have some like white plain cotton warp on my loom, like just a little bit left, and I want to make a sampler because I've been interested in learning more about this technique called rose path. And I mean, it's a twill based technique. It's nothing special, but it's more of a weaving tradition. So rose path, or rosengång as it is called in Swedish, is has like some really strong traditions in Sweden, and I think it's super interesting to learn about kind of history and women's history through weaving. So I've been reading a little bit. I borrowed some books from the library on rose path weaving. Had a epiphany yesterday when I was reading about it, because there's different types of rose path. And one of them is like a loose rose path, and there's a bound rose path. And I realized that the bound rose path is the same thing as krokbragd. So krokbragd, which is a Norwegian term for the same type of technique. So I mean, that made it so much easier to find resources on how to actually weave this thing. It's a super simple type weave, it's nothing complicated, but it was really fun making that connection between the techniques that is like discussed in different places under different names. But hopefully I'll make a different video on this whole rose path thing. But I'm gonna set up the sampler for that, so thread that in a V-point shape and try a little bit of bound and a loose rose path and see what happens. So that's what I'm gonna do a little bit on my loom. We'll see how far I get with the actual weaving part. And then if I get bored with that, or if I have some time over, I also have some sock yarns over here that I want to weigh. So these are a little bit leftover sock yarns. And I have a plan for a weaving tutorial for the rigid heddle loom together with Limo Design, who makes these sock yarns. So we want to make a super simple tutorial on how to weave with sock yarn on a Cricut loom, because she sells the Cricut looms. So I'm gonna weigh up a little bit of this and see, kind of figure out the simplest way and like how much you need and things like that. So that's like a little thing that I will have on the side if I have time. So let's get weaving. What's this? It's my yarn! Found it finally. It was hanging in my bedroom for some reason, which is not where I usually keep my yarn. But this is the beautiful chocolatey alpaca yarn that's gonna be the warp for my father's scarf. I also have this like a little bit lighter brown, but I think I'm gonna keep this for a different one. So I'm gonna combine this one with this mini alpaca from Sandnes Yarn. I think I mix them and the warp's gonna look good. And then I have another, which is alpaca silke. So it's a bit luxurious. So it is 70% baby alpaca and 30% mulberry silk. So only the best things for my dad. We'll see if he wears it. Like, I don't think I've ever seen him wear a scarf in his life, but he better now. So there's gonna be, I'm thinking like a broken herringbone pattern, or there's also this pattern that I saw in Hand Woven a couple of issues back that I will be checking out. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember saving it thinking, this might be something for that scarf. But otherwise, just a broken herringbone bone twill will look, I think, really nice in these colors and really classy. So now it's the next day, as you might see. But I did get some stuff done yesterday. I rethreaded this white warp. So first of all, I took off like the side sections of it. So I have these two small warp braids left over that I just tied off and saved. I have a small table loom that I just bought like super cheap off Facebook Marketplace. So I think I will use these to put on that and just have a go and see how that works. It's just a 2-shaft simple table loom that I'm hoping to use to kind of show my friends how to weave and teach new people how to weave. I really want to like lure people into weaving, so I think this might be a good tool for that. But anyway, I saved like a small section, maybe like, it's just a couple of inches, maybe like 20 centimeters wide, maybe a little bit more. So I threaded it in a V point, which is kind of traditional rose path as far as I understand, and then I slayed it, and then this morning I tied it onto the front. But like, this is something that I've realized that I've done before, and I don't really know how to solve it. Is that when I have these kind of short end sections of warp, or a very short warp, the back end of the warp is not kind of snugly secured on the back beam, so it's not kind of rolled into there and like secured. So in the end it's just like a bunch of loops. So when I pull one thread, another thread gets pulled back. So I had to be very careful about threading, and it was a little bit of a mess tying onto the front and getting even tension, because yeah, they're kind of interconnected. So if you like pull on one, the other one just goes. I don't know if there's a smart solution for these really short warps, because it's quite nice to be able to use the end of your warp this way. If you're done with your project, you still have some leftover warp to just thread it, reslay it, and just have a go at something different. But I think I might have managed in the end. And I mean, this is just a sample. The tension, I mean, if the tension doesn't work out, it's just this long, so it will be fine. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna have a go at weaving a little bit with this rose path. There seems like still some technical stuff that I need to figure out for this, but kind of how to, I need to tie up so this is what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna tie up the threadles, which I haven't done yet, and I have to see which way I'm gonna tie them up, because there's different way of weaving rose path, and I just need to figure out if it's different ways of tying up the threadles. But They should be fairly quick, and then I will just do some practice weaving of rose cloth. So this is the plan for my alpaca scarf. As I mentioned, I have Ven alpaca and Sannes alpaca that I use in my warp. And I'm going to make the scarf about 23 centimeters wide, maybe a little bit narrow, so I think with draw in that's going to be pretty good. And then I'm making it 170 centimeters long, because that's roughly the height of my dad. He's a couple of centimeters longer, I think. Adding 10% to that and some waist, I think the warp is going to end up around 227 centimeters. And I calculated the wraps per centimeter to be about 7, so for a twill set that should be about 5 threads per centimeter. So here I am back at my loom. It's now a naked loom, and I have taken off the breast beam to sit in it. So I finished the sampler, the rose cloth sampler. So I have done this sampler of the little thing of warp that I had left, and I think it turned out pretty nice. It's really fun to kind of figure out the patterns, so the patterns are mirrored on the other side. So I'm planning to do this, like I'm reading about this and trying this out, so I will talk more about rose cloth in like a separate rose cloth video. But yeah, it was really fun. It's quite time consuming, but and I'm not very experienced with weft-faced weaves, but it was really fun trying it out. I did it on 4 shafts. And it was really fun once it kind of clicked how the patterns are actually made, so I could start to actually have some control over what was going on in the loom, and not just like weaving and treadling and like seeing what happens, but actually like, oh, I want to make this shape now. So I made these little women symbols that I'm pretty pleased with. Yeah, so it was a fun way to spend the afternoon making this sample. So since this is done, my loom is now free and available, and I also think I can use the same threadle tie-up for my scarf project, which is nice because I do not like tying up the threadles on this counterbalance loom. My God, it is uncomfortable. And it's kind of hot today, like humid, and it's raining now, but it was just like, oh, not, it's always the time when I really question my choice of hobby. But I think I can use the same one, so hopefully I don't have to redo it. So I've also finished making the warp for the scarf that I was talking about, my father's scarf. So I have the warp braid here. So it was also really quick making this warp, because it's a warp for only one scarf, and I warped it directly with 2 threads, so one of the alpaca, like the local alpaca, and one with the kind of the Sannes mini alpaca. So it was quite quick making this braid, and it feels really nice. I think the yarns are very similar color, but still complement each other quite nice. So I think this is going to look really nice. And yeah, it's a short warp. In general, I still do very short warps, basically one project per warp. It gives you a bit more waste, but I feel like as a fairly new weaver, it's really good practice putting on warps. So I just want to do it, even though it might not be the most fun part. Just putting on warp after warp, I think it's really good practice. So that's why I do it. I just plan a project, put on the warp, do the project, take it off, and then I do it again. So that's gonna be my next steps, and we'll see when that happens. Maybe it happens tomorrow, maybe it doesn't, but I'm pretty pleased with what I got done this weekend of weaving. Finished sampler and made a warp for this, so pretty good weekend, I would say. Until next time.